What would you do if you discovered your husband of 18 years made a romantic dinner reservation for another woman? Most wives would scream, cry, or throw things. But when 38-year-old Madison Fletcher found that restaurant confirmation on her husband's phone, she didn't break down. She made her own reservation. Same restaurant. Same night. Next table. And she brought the other woman's husband with her. What happened next didn't just expose an affair, it unraveled two marriages in the most quietly devastating way possible. Because sometimes the most powerful revenge isn't loud. It's surgical. My name is Madison Fletcher. I'm 38 years old, and I teach literature at Columbia University in Manhattan. For 18 years, I believed I had the perfect marriage. David and I lived in a brownstone on the Upper West Side. We had our routines, our quiet dinners, our weekend trips to the farmer's market. To everyone else, we were the couple who had it all figured out. Stable. Comfortable. Unshakable, but perfect marriages don't exist. They're just well-maintained illusions. The illusion cracked on a Tuesday evening in March. David was in the shower, and his phone buzzed on the nightstand. One notification. One simple message that would change everything. Reservation confirmed, Lou Bernardine, Friday 8 p.m. Window table as requested. She'll love it. Lou Bernardine. The restaurant we'd talked about visiting for our anniversary every year but never did because David always said it was too expensive. Too pretentious. Too much. Apparently, it wasn't too much for someone else. I'd never been the type to check my husband's phone. Trust was sacred to me. But intuition, that's different. Intuition is your soul whispering warnings that your mind refuses to hear. The phone was unlocked. The passcode was still our wedding date, because David never changed anything that mattered. What I found wasn't just an affair. It was an entire relationship. Messages. Photos. A year of secret conversations with someone named Sophia Chen from the marketing department at his law firm. Good morning, beautiful. Can't wait to see you tonight. That blue dress looked incredible on you. Each message was a small death. Each photo was evidence of a life I didn't know existed. David and Sophia in Santa Barbara on what I thought was his solo work retreat. David and Sophia laughing in hotel rooms while I waited at home, cooking dinner for a ghost. Have you seen my cufflinks? David called from the bathroom. Top drawer. I replied, my voice steady even though my world was dissolving. That night, I lay beside him, listening to his breathing while my body stayed rigid with betrayal. How many times had I explained away his distance? His late nights? His sudden interest in expensive cologne and crisp shirts. Every instinct I'd ignored had been right. Every doubt I'd buried had been truth, but I didn't cry. I didn't confront him. I planned. What happened next shocked even her own family. The next morning, David kissed me goodbye like always. Professional. Mechanical. The kiss of a man already gone. Good luck with the merger meeting, I said, watching him straighten his tie. Thanks. I'll probably be late tonight. Complex negotiations. Of course he would be late. Sophia would be waiting. After he left, I called the university and requested emergency leave. 3 days. I told them it was a family crisis, which wasn't entirely a lie. My family was dying. I just hadn't buried it yet. I sat at our kitchen table, staring at the coffee growing cold in my cup. The morning light streamed through windows that had once felt like home. Now they felt like a stage set for a play I'd never auditioned for. I'd spent 18 years being the perfect wife. Supportive. Understanding. Accommodating. I'd shrunk myself to fit into David's life, his schedule, his needs. I'd become a shadow of a woman who once had her own dreams, but shadows can disappear. And sometimes, disappearing is the most powerful thing you can do. I pulled out my laptop and began to research. Not frantically, like a woman scorned. Methodically. Like a professor preparing for the most important lecture of her career. David's calendar was meticulous. Color-coded. Shared with me because he'd always claimed transparency was important to him. The irony wasn't lost on me. Friday, 8 p.m. Lou Bernardine. Window table. Wine pairings pre-selected. A perfect evening for two people who thought they were invisible. I searched for Sophia Chen on the firm's employee directory. Marketing coordinator. 28 years old. Bright smile. Engaged to someone named Marcus Chen, a software engineer who worked for a tech startup in Brooklyn. Marcus looked kind in his LinkedIn photo. The kind of man who probably brought flowers home for no reason. And remembered anniversaries. The kind of man who deserved better than a wife who made restaurant reservations with other women's husbands. I stared at his picture for a long time. We were strangers, but we shared something deeper than friendship. We shared betrayal. We shared the particular kind of blindness that comes from loving someone who's already left. As a university professor, I had certain privileges. One of them was inviting guest speakers for seminars. I crafted an email that was professional, credible, and completely devastating. Dear Mr. Chen, my name is Madison Fletcher, and I teach contemporary literature at Columbia University. I'm organizing a panel discussion on technology's impact on modern storytelling, and I came across your work at Innovate Tech Solutions. I'd love to discuss the possibility of you joining our panel. I've made a dinner reservation for this Friday at Le Bernardin at 8 p.m. to talk through the details. I hope you can join me. Best regards, Madison Fletcher. His response came within 2 hours. Enthusiastic. Grateful. Completely unaware that I was about to destroy his world to save mine. I called Le Bernardin directly. The hostess was accommodating. When I explained I needed a table near the reservation under Fletcher and Associates for potential business partners, a table where we could observe each other's professional dynamics. Certainly, Ms. Fletcher. I'll seat you adjacent to their table. Any preferences for wine pairings? Just a clear view, I said. That's all I need. Everything was arranged. No screaming. No accusations. Just truth, served at exactly the right temperature, but I wasn't done. I opened my laptop and began typing. The hardest part wasn't planning the confrontation. It was the waiting. For 3 days, I moved through our apartment like a ghost preparing for her own funeral. I made David's coffee. I did his laundry. I smiled when he texted me updates about his day. All lies. All performance. All the final acts of a woman who was already gone. David didn't notice. He was too busy living his double life to see that his wife was disappearing right in front of him. He came home Wednesday night with takeout from our favorite Thai restaurant, chattering about office politics while I nodded and made appropriate responses. You seem quiet, he said, reaching across the table to touch my hand. Just tired, I replied, not pulling away. Long week. He squeezed my fingers gently. The same fingers that had been texting another woman minutes before. The same fingers that had traced promises on my skin on our wedding night. The same fingers that were now strangers to me. We should plan something special for the weekend, he said. Maybe that new gallery in Soho? That sounds nice, I said, knowing we'd never go. Knowing that by the weekend, there would be no more we. Thursday morning, I stood in our walk-in closet, selecting an outfit for Friday night. Not for David. Not for revenge. For myself. For the woman I was about to become. I chose a black silk dress with a high neckline and long sleeves. Elegant but not seductive. Professional but not cold. The kind of dress that commanded respect without demanding attention. I paired it with my grandmother's pearl earrings and low heels that wouldn't make sound when I walked out. I was dressing for war, but I wanted to look like I was going to a board meeting. David found me in the closet, adjusting the neckline in the mirror. Special occasion? He asked, kissing my temple. Faculty dinner, I lied smoothly. Department heads only. Lucky them, he said, wrapping his arms around me from behind. You look beautiful. I watched our reflection in the mirror. A husband embracing his wife. A tableau of domestic bliss. But I could see what he couldn't, the distance in my eyes. The way I held myself slightly away from him. The way I was already leaving, even while standing still. I should go, he said, checking his watch. Big day tomorrow. Yes, I said quietly. It certainly will be. He kissed me goodbye and left for work. I stood in the closet for a long time after he was gone, memorizing the feeling of being kissed. By someone who was already kissing someone else. I wanted to remember exactly how betrayal felt, so I'd never accept it again. That evening, I wrote letters. Not angry ones. Not accusatory ones. Just truth, set down in black ink on white paper. One letter to David, explaining why I couldn't stay married to a man who'd chosen someone else. One letter to myself, promising to never again make myself smaller for someone else's comfort. And one letter to the woman I was about to become, welcoming her into the world. I sealed the letters and placed them in my desk drawer. Some truths are too important to trust to spoken words. Friday morning arrived gray and cold, but I felt lighter than I had in months. Not because I was happy, but because I was finally, completely honest. About what I knew. About what I deserved. About what I was going to do. David left for work without suspicion. He was too busy anticipating his evening with Sophia to notice that his wife was preparing for her own kind of date. I spent the morning at the university, teaching my final class before everything changed. My students were discussing betrayal in contemporary literature, and I found myself speaking with unusual passion about how authors use revelation to transform their characters. The most powerful moments in literature, I told them, aren't when characters discover the truth. They're when characters decide what to do with it. One student raised her hand. But what if the truth destroys everything? I paused, thinking about the evening ahead. About David and Sophia, sharing wine and believing they were invisible. About Marcus, who would learn that his wife was not the woman he thought he'd married. About myself, about to step into a life I'd never imagined. Then you build something new, I said. Something honest. Something that can't be destroyed by truth because it's built on truth. The students nodded, taking notes. They had no idea. Their professor was about to live every word she'd just spoken. Class ended. I gathered my things, knowing it was the last time I'd teach as Madison Fletcher, the married woman. The next time I stood in front of students, I'd be someone else entirely, someone who didn't accept lies. Someone who demanded honesty. Someone who chose herself. The transformation was about to begin. I arrived at Le Bernardin at 7:30, 30 minutes before the reservation. The hostess, a young woman with kind eyes and a professional smile, greeted me warmly. "Miss Fletcher? Your table is ready. Right this way." She led me to a perfect spot. Close enough to the window table to see everything, far enough away to maintain plausible deniability. The lighting was soft, the atmosphere intimate, the view of the harbor spectacular. It was exactly the kind of place where marriages end. I ordered a glass of champagne, not to celebrate, but to steady myself. The bubbles felt sharp against my tongue, like tiny explosions of clarity. Marcus arrived at 7:45, looking nervous and excited. He wore a navy suit that was clearly his best one, and he carried a leather portfolio. He'd prepared for this meeting, researching our university, probably rehearsing talking points about technology and storytelling. He had no idea he was about to become part of the most devastating story of his life. "Miss Fletcher," he said, approaching the table. "Thank you so much for this opportunity. I've been looking forward to our conversation." "Please, call me Madison," I said, standing to shake his hand. "And thank you for coming on such short notice." He was handsome in an understated way. Gentle eyes, warm smile, the kind of man who probably held doors and remembered birthdays. Looking at him, I felt a stab of sympathy. He was about to learn that the woman he loved was capable of extraordinary cruelty, but he deserved to know. Just like I had deserved to know. "I have to admit," he said, settling into his chair, "I'm curious about how you found my work. Our startup isn't exactly high profile." "I'm very thorough in my research," I replied, which was true. "I believe in knowing everything about the people I work with." We ordered appetizers and began to talk. Marcus was intelligent, passionate about his work, clearly devoted to his wife. He mentioned Sophia several times, casual references that felt like small knives. "Sophia's always encouraging me to take opportunities like this," he said. "She believes in networking, building professional relationships." "She sounds very supportive," I said, my voice carefully neutral. "She is. We've been together for 5 years, married for 2. She's everything to me." The way he said it, with such genuine love, made my heart hurt. Not for myself, but for him. He was about to lose his everything, and he didn't even know it. "Tell me about your work," I said, genuinely curious. If I was going to destroy this man's life, I wanted to know who he was first. He lit up, talking about artificial intelligence and human storytelling, about technology's role in preserving authentic human connection. He was brilliant, passionate, kind. Everything David used to be, before he became a man who made secret reservations. At 8 o'clock exactly, they arrived. David wore his charcoal suit, the one I'd bought him for his birthday last year. Sophia wore a red dress that was beautiful and inappropriate, the kind of dress that announced its intentions. They walked in together, not touching but moving with the synchronized intimacy of people who'd done this before. They were seated at the window table, exactly where I'd known they would be. The hostess pulled out Sophia's chair, and David helped her with her coat. Such perfect gentlemen for such an imperfect situation. I watched Marcus's face as he caught sight of his wife. Confusion flickered across his features, followed by something that might have been recognition. But not alarm. "Not yet." "Is that," he started to say, then stopped. "Is that your wife?" I asked gently. He nodded, his brow furrowing. "But she said she had a work dinner tonight. With clients." "She does," I said. "Just not the kind of clients she mentioned." The truth was landing slowly, like snow beginning to stick. Marcus turned to look at me, really look at me, for the first time since he'd arrived. "Who are you?" he asked quietly. "I'm the wife of the man sitting across from your wife," I said. "The man who's been having an affair with her for over a year." The words hung in the air between us like a death sentence. Marcus went very still, his face cycling through disbelief, recognition, and finally, devastation. "How do you know?" he whispered. "Because I found their messages. Their photos. Their plans. Because I've been living with a stranger for months. While you've been living with a liar." Marcus looked back at their table. David was pouring wine, leaning close to whisper something that made Sophia laugh. They looked like lovers. They looked like people who belonged together. They looked like everything Marcus and I had thought we had. "What do we do?" he asked, his voice breaking slightly. We give them exactly what they wanted, I said. A public dinner. Just not the kind they planned. I raised my hand and signaled the waiter. Could you please send a bottle of champagne to the table by the window? The couple in the red dress and charcoal suit. The waiter nodded and moved away. Marcus watched him go, then turned back to me. Madison, he said, using my name for the first time. I think I'm going to be sick. Breathe, I said. The hard part is almost over. The champagne arrived at their table. David looked confused, then pleased. Sophia smiled and raised her glass. They were toasting their secret while their spouses watched from 20 feet away. Should we go over there? Marcus asked. No, I said. We wait. Truth has its own timing. David must have asked the waiter who sent the champagne, because the young man pointed discreetly toward our table. David's head turned, and our eyes met across the restaurant. I watched the exact moment recognition hit him. His face went white. His hand froze halfway to his mouth. The champagne glass trembled in his fingers. Sophia followed his gaze and saw me. Then she saw Marcus. The color drained from her face so quickly I thought she might faint. Now, I said quietly, we go. I stood. Slowly, smoothing my dress. Marcus followed, his movements uncertain. Together, we walked across the restaurant toward the table where two people sat frozen in their own private hell. The moment of truth had arrived. And truth, I was about to learn, was the most powerful weapon of all. The walk across the restaurant felt like a funeral march. Every step was deliberate, measured, final. Other diners continued their conversations, unaware that they were witnessing the end of two marriages. David and Sophia sat paralyzed at their table, champagne glasses still raised in a toast that would never be completed. They looked like actors who'd forgotten their lines, frozen in a scene that had suddenly become too real. I reached their table first, with Marcus close behind. The silence was deafening. Good evening, I said, my voice calm and clear. I hope you don't mind the champagne. I thought you should celebrate properly. David's mouth opened, but no words came out. Sophia set down her glass with shaking hands. Madison, David finally managed. What are you doing here? Having dinner, I replied. Just like you. Although I was honest about my plans. Marcus stepped forward, his face a mask of controlled devastation. Hello, Sophia. Marcus, she whispered, her voice barely audible. I can explain. Can you? I asked. Because I'd love to hear how you explain a year of secret messages, weekend trips, and romantic dinners. I'd love to hear how you explain lying to your husband every single day. The tables around us had gone quiet. Other diners were trying to pretend they weren't listening while hanging on every word. Please, Sophia said, tears starting to fall. Not here. Not like this. Where then? Marcus asked, his voice stronger now. At home, where you've been lying to me for months. In our bed, where you've been planning your escapes. David found his voice. Madison, we need to talk privately. No, I said firmly. We needed to talk privately a year ago. Before you decided my marriage was expendable. Before you decided I was expendable. I turned to the hostess, who was hovering nearby with obvious concern. Could we possibly have a private dining room? It seems we have some family matters to discuss. Within minutes, we were seated in a small, elegant private room. The four of us arranged around a table like negotiators in a war no one could win. David tried to take control. Madison, I know how this looks, but it looks like exactly what it is, I interrupted. A married man having dinner with his married mistress while both of their spouses are at home, believing lies. We never meant for it to go this far, Sophia said, her voice pleading. How far did you mean for it to go? Marcus asked quietly. Just emotional cheating? Just secret lunches? Just everything except the actual marriage vows? The silence stretched between us. Finally, David spoke. I fell in love with her, he said simply. I didn't plan it. I didn't want it. But it happened. When? I asked. When what? When did you fall in love with her? Before or after you stopped loving me? David's face crumpled. Madison, I never stopped loving you. Yes, you did, I said calmly. You stopped loving me the first time you kissed her. You stopped loving me the first time you lied to me. You stopped loving me the first time you chose her over me. People make mistakes, Sophia said desperately. People can change. This wasn't a mistake, Marcus said, his voice growing stronger. Mistakes are accidents. This was a choice. A choice you made every single day for over a year. I reached into my purse and pulled out a hotel keycard. I have a room at the Pierre tonight, I said, placing it on the table. David, you're welcome to go home. I'll be back Monday morning, and I'd prefer if you weren't there. Madison, please, David said, reaching for my hand. Don't do this. We can work through this. We can get counseling. We can fix this. I looked at his hand covering mine. The same hand that had held another woman. The same hand that had typed lies to me while professing love to her. You can't fix something that was never broken, I said. You can only stop pretending it was whole. I stood, and Marcus stood with me. We looked like allies now, united in our betrayal and our dignity. I want a divorce, I said to David. And I want you to move out this weekend. Madison, no more words, I said. No more explanations. No more lies. Just, goodbye. I turned to Marcus. Would you like to get coffee? Somewhere that serves honesty with the cream and sugar? He nodded, understanding. We were both about to become different people, and sometimes it's easier to become someone new when you're not alone. Wait, Sophia called as we reached the door. What about us? What about what we had? I turned back to look at her. Young, beautiful, desperate. A woman who'd traded her integrity for a man who'd already proven he could betray the person he loved most. You can have him, I said. But remember, a man who cheats with you will cheat on you. And a woman who lies to her husband will lie to her lover. You're perfect for each other. Marcus and I walked out together, leaving behind two people who'd gotten exactly what they'd wanted and were just now realizing it wasn't what they'd needed. The revelation was complete. The truth was out. And for the first time in a year, I felt like I could breathe. Marcus and I walked through the city for hours that night. We found a small cafe in Greenwich Village that stayed open late, the kind of place where wounded people come to heal over coffee and honest conversation. I keep thinking I should have known, Marcus said, stirring his coffee absently. All those late nights, the new clothes, the way she started being so careful with her phone. I knew, I said. Deep down, I knew for months. But knowing and accepting are different things. We sat in comfortable silence, two strangers who'd shared the most intimate experience possible, having our lives destroyed by the same lie. What happens now? He asked. Now we figure out who we are when we're not defined by other people's betrayals, I said. We learn to be whole people again. Are you angry? He asked. I considered the question. I was. But anger is exhausting. And it gives them too much power over who I become next. Marcus nodded. I loved her completely. I thought she loved me the same way. She probably did, I said. But some people love multiple people at once. They love the safety of marriage. And the excitement of affair. They love the stability of commitment and the thrill of deception. They love having everything without having to choose. And we're the ones who pay the price. We were, I corrected. But not anymore. We exchanged numbers that night, not as potential lovers but as survivors. Sometimes the most important relationships are forged in shared devastation. I spent the weekend at the Pierre, not hiding but transforming. I called my sister in California, told her everything. I called my college roommate, told her everything. I called my department head, told her I'd need some time but would be back stronger. Each conversation was a small act of reclamation. Each truth shared was a piece of my authentic self. Returning Monday morning, I returned to our apartment to find David gone. He'd left a note on the kitchen table, handwritten on our good stationery. Madison, I know you won't believe this, but I never wanted to hurt you. I never wanted to become the kind of man who destroys his marriage. I'm moving in with my brother while I figure out what comes next. I'm sorry. Not just for getting caught, but for putting us in a position where getting caught was possible. You deserved better. You deserved honesty. You deserved a husband who chose you every day. I hope someday you can forgive me. Not for my sake, but for yours. David. I read the letter twice, then folded it carefully and put it in a drawer. It wasn't enough, but it was honest. Finally, David was being honest. Over the following weeks, I began the legal process of divorce. I met with lawyers, divided assets, untangled 18 years of shared life. It was painful but necessary work, like removing a splinter that had been embedded too long. David tried to reconcile several times. Flowers at my office. Long emails about couples therapy. A handwritten letter delivered to my apartment. But I'd learned the difference between regret and genuine change. Regret is about consequences. Change is about character. David regretted getting caught. That wasn't the same as changing who he was. Marcus and I met for coffee every week. We talked about our divorces, our healing, our hopes for the future. We became friends in the truest sense. People who knew the worst about each other and chose to build something positive anyway. One evening in late spring, as we walked through Central Park after another coffee date, Marcus stopped suddenly. Madison, he said, I need to tell you something. I turned to face him, curious. I'm grateful, he said. Not for what they did to us, but for what you did for us. You could have confronted them privately. You could have handled it in a way that protected everyone's dignity. But you chose truth over comfort. And that saved us both from living lies. We saved ourselves, I said. I just created the opportunity. No, he said firmly. You created the courage. You showed me that it's possible to face the truth without falling apart. You showed me that dignity is more important than convenience. As summer approached, I realized I was becoming someone new. Not bitter. Not broken. But clear. Uncompromising about honesty. Unwilling to shrink myself for anyone's comfort. My students noticed the change. Professor Fletcher, one of them said after class, you seem different this semester. More present. I am, I said. I'm learning to live in the truth instead of despite it. The divorce was finalized in September. David had moved to Boston, taken a position at a firm there. Sophia had quit her job and moved back to San Francisco. Their relationship hadn't survived the transition from secret to public, from exciting to ordinary. Marcus and I continued our weekly coffee dates, but something had shifted. We were no longer just survivors helping each other heal. We were becoming something more. One October evening, as we sat in our usual cafe, Marcus reached across the table and took my hand. I have something to ask you, he said. Ask away. Would you like to have dinner? Not coffee. Not as survivors. As us. Whatever that means now. I looked at our joined hands. His were steady, honest, warm. They didn't promise perfection, but they promised presence. Yes, I said. I'd like that very much. We had dinner the following Friday at a small Italian restaurant in Brooklyn. Nothing fancy, nothing dramatic. Just good food and honest conversation. Between two people who'd learned to value truth over comfort. As we walked home under the autumn stars, Marcus asked, do you think we'll ever trust completely again? I think we'll trust differently, I said. We'll trust with our eyes open. We'll trust with boundaries. We'll trust without losing ourselves. Is that enough? He asked. I thought about it. It's better than enough. It's healthy. We stood outside my apartment building, neither of us wanting the evening to end. Madison, Marcus said, I want you to know. I'm not looking for someone to heal me. I'm looking for someone to grow with. Someone who's already whole. Good, I said. Because I'm not looking for someone to complete me. I'm looking for someone to complement me. He smiled, the first completely unguarded smile I'd seen from him. I think we might be perfect for each other. Not perfect, I corrected. Just honest. And honest is better than perfect. He kissed me then, softly, without desperation. It was the kiss of a man who'd learned the difference between wanting and needing, between loving and possessing. As I watched him walk away, I felt something I hadn't felt in years, peace. Not the peace of having everything figured out, but the peace of knowing I could handle whatever came next. I was no longer the woman who'd accepted lies to keep the peace. I was no longer the woman who'd diminished herself to make others comfortable. I was Madison Fletcher, whole and honest and free, and that was enough. That was everything. A year after that devastating dinner at Le Bernardin, I received an unexpected invitation. My former colleague, Professor Janet Morrison, was retiring, and the English department was hosting a celebration at the Metropolitan Museum of Art. I almost didn't go. These events were always filled with faculty couples, the kind of social situations that reminded me of what I'd lost. But then I realized I hadn't lost anything. I'd gained everything. I wore a deep blue dress that made me feel powerful and professional. I wasn't dressing for anyone else's approval. I was dressing for myself, for the woman I'd become. The event was elegant, held in the museum's great hall, with its soaring ceilings and marble columns. I moved through the crowd easily, confident in my own skin in a way I'd never been when I was married. Madison. Professor Morrison approached with a warm smile. I'm so glad you came. You look radiant. Thank you, I said, meaning it. And congratulations on your retirement. You've earned it. I've heard you're doing incredible work with your new seminar on truth and authenticity in contemporary literature, she said. The students are raving about it. I smiled. It's a subject I'm passionate about. As we talked, I noticed a familiar figure across the room. David stood near the wine table, alone, looking older than his 42 years. He'd grown a beard, lost weight, and there was something different about his posture. Less confident. More careful. Our eyes met across the room. He nodded slightly, a gesture of acknowledgement that held no expectation. I nodded back, feeling nothing but mild curiosity about the stranger he'd become. Madison. A warm hand touched my elbow. I turned to find Marcus beside me, handsome in a navy suit, carrying 2 glasses of champagne. You made it, I said, accepting the champagne with a smile. I wouldn't miss it, he said. Besides, I wanted to see you in your element. We'd been dating for 6 months now, taking things slowly, building trust carefully. He'd moved to Manhattan, taken a position with a tech company in Midtown. We saw each other twice a week, maintained our own apartments, our own lives. It was adult love, conscious love, the kind of love that enhanced rather than consumed. There's someone I'd like you to meet, Marcus said, gesturing toward a woman approaching us. My sister, Caroline. Caroline was warm, intelligent, clearly protective of her brother. So you're the famous Madison, she said with a smile. Marcus talks about you constantly. All good things, I hope, I said. The best things, she assured me. He says you saved his life. We saved each other, I said, glancing at Marcus. As the evening progressed, I found myself genuinely enjoying the celebration. I laughed with colleagues, discussed literature with passion, felt completely present in my own life. At one point, I stepped outside for air and found myself face to face with David. He looked nervous, unsure. Madison, he said quietly. Could we talk for a minute? I nodded, curious rather than anxious. I wanted to apologize, he said. Really apologize. Not for getting caught, but for becoming the kind of man who had something to get caught for. I appreciate that, I said. I also wanted to thank you, he continued. For handling everything the way you did. You could have destroyed me publicly, professionally. You could have made everything much worse. I wasn't trying to destroy you, I said. I was trying to save myself. He nodded. I know. And I'm grateful. I've been in therapy, working on understanding how I became someone I didn't recognize. I've learned a lot about myself. None of it flattering, but all of it necessary. I'm glad, I said, meaning it. Are you happy? He asked. I considered the question. I'm honest, I said finally. And honesty has led to happiness. And him? David glanced toward the museum, where Marcus was visible through the windows, talking with Caroline. He's a good man, I said. An honest man. David nodded sadly. I used to be an honest man. I'm learning to be one again. I hope you succeed, I said. Everyone deserves the chance to become who they're meant to be. We stood in comfortable silence for a moment, two people who'd once shared everything and now shared only history. I should go back inside, I said. Madison, he called as I reached the door. I hope you know, you deserved better than I gave you. You deserved honesty from the beginning. Yes, I said simply. I did. I returned to Marcus, who was waiting with patient eyes and a gentle smile. Everything okay? He asked. Everything's perfect, I said, taking his hand. As we prepared to leave, Marcus turned to me with a thoughtful expression. I have something to ask you, he said. What's that? Would you like to go away together? A weekend trip. Vermont, maybe. Just us, no schedules, no expectations. Just time. I looked at him, this man who'd learned to love carefully, honestly, completely. Who'd seen me at my most broken and chosen to build something beautiful from the pieces. Yes, I said. I'd love that. We walked out into the New York night, two people who discovered that sometimes the most devastating betrayal leads to the most authentic love. Not the desperate kind that clings and suffocates, but the secure kind that trusts and grows. As we hailed a taxi, I reflected on the journey that had brought me here. A year ago, I'd been a woman who accepted lies to keep peace. Tonight, I was a woman who demanded truth to create peace. The restaurant reservation that had destroyed my marriage had also saved my life. The confrontation that had ended my old world had opened a new one. The truth that had felt like death had actually been birthed. I was no longer the woman who'd shrunk herself to fit someone else's life. I was Madison Fletcher, whole and honest. And free. I'd learned that the most powerful revenge isn't destruction, it's reconstruction. Not of what was broken, but of what was always meant to be. And in the taxi, with Marcus's hand warm in mine and the city lights streaming past the windows, I felt something I'd never felt before, complete peace with my choices. I'd chosen truth over comfort, dignity over convenience, myself over everyone else's expectations. The woman who discovered that restaurant confirmation had been afraid of losing everything. The woman sitting in this taxi had learned that losing everything false was the only way to find everything real. Some stories end with revenge. Some end with reunion. This story ended with something better, redemption. Not of the people who'd betrayed me, but of the woman who'd been betrayed. I'd saved myself. And in doing so, I'd learned the most important lesson of all. The greatest love story isn't about finding someone who completes you. It's about becoming someone who doesn't need completing. The taxi pulled up to my apartment building. Marcus walked me to the door, kissed me goodnight with the promise of tomorrow, and waited until I was safely inside. I climbed the stairs to my apartment, opened the door to my space, my sanctuary, my home. I'd built a life that belonged entirely to me, and I'd learned to love it completely. That night, as I prepared for bed, I caught my reflection in the bathroom mirror. The woman looking back at me was someone I'd never met before that devastating Tuesday evening. She was stronger, clearer, more honest than the woman I'd been. She was the woman I'd always been meant to become. I smiled at my reflection, turned off the lights, and settled into sleep. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new opportunities, new chances to choose truth over comfort, and I would be ready. Because I'd learned the most powerful truth of all: when you stop accepting lies, you start living authentically. And authentic living, however difficult, is the only kind worth pursuing. The story that began with betrayal ended with something far more valuable: self-respect, honest love, and the quiet confidence that comes from knowing you can handle anything life offers, because you've already handled the worst. And you've chosen to become your best. What do you think about Madison's journey? Did she handle her husband's betrayal with dignity, or should she have chosen differently? Share your thoughts below, and don't forget to subscribe for more stories about finding strength in life's most challenging moments.